thank all the panelists who took time out of their busy schedule and ensured their presence. I would be much obliged if Vasanta takes over the event from here.
Thanks, Ankit. Thank you for that lovely introduction, and thanks everyone for being here today. I hope I'm audible. If anybody can confirm.
Yes.
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks Tiyasha and Chinmay for joining in. So our company is joining us 4th August. So this is like our last weekend, and we knew we wouldn't be able to meet you guys again once everything starts. So it's great to be here and to help you out with any questions that you may have. And special thanks to Anirudh. It's his birthday on Sunday, and this is his birthday weekend, and he's still here. So thank you so much for joining in today. And it's great to have somebody from Bain, because this is the first time that the holy trinity of MBB is complete on IIT Kharagpur, and it'll be great to know what Bain looks for and how to navigate the recruitment process of Bain and Company in specific. So yeah, let's get started. All right. So I think the first question that Ankit slightly also elaborated on is, what does a consultant do? And a more important question, how much do they pay and what is the lifestyle like? So let's address this first. I'll tell you a little bit about what a consultant does. I can't be sure right now because I haven't joined the company yet, but I can tell you whatever I know. So a consultant is basically a third party who can give an outside perspective to any company's problems that it's facing right now. And it's not that only banks or FMCGs or manufacturing companies hire consultants. Anybody, even startups are hiring consultants today. It's great to get the outside perspective of someone who can take a problem and divide it into its minute aspects and look at where the issue is and how to correct that. So there are two types of consulting companies, I would say, strategy consulting, and then there's another type of consulting, another set of consulting firms which even go through with the implementation process of the strategy that is proposed. So most of the projects that MBB takes up, as far as I know, are just strategy consulting. So you create the strategy and you let the client take over the implementation. But nowadays, even these companies are taking up implementation projects, and that helps the consultant see the result of whatever strategies that they propose. So that is, I think, in a very brief aspect, what a consultant does. Now, if Tiyasha, Chinmay, do you guys have anything to add? Anirudh?
I think you pretty much summarized it. I think that's what a consultant does, based on what the lifestyle is like. So again, we haven't really joined in. Whatever we know is from what we have heard from other people. But I think online consulting is going to be pretty much like a number of long hours. So like if you are going to join consulting, you must be prepared that it is going to be quite a few hours, and like you might have to sacrifice your weekends as well at times, and you should be mentally prepared for that. So that's just one thing which I wanted to add.
Right. And now as far as the pay is concerned, right, I think we can broadly put it around 15 to 18 lakhs, I would say. That is kind of the pay that you can expect from these firms. And a lot of times, consulting companies are not where somebody goes to settle into that role. It's actually like a very good position from where you can exit into your dream companies. So these companies teach you everything about how a business runs within the 2 or 3 years that you spend, and then you can exit into top level management positions in startups or in established firms as well, or you can go into a venture capitalist, private equity, investment banking, and all of these jobs pay like crazy. So I've heard that they pay like 40-50 lakhs per annum for the start and at the starting itself. So that is kind of like the transition that is expected from people who usually go into consulting. Obviously, there are a few people who want to go there so that they can make it to the partner or engagement manager or associate partner or those levels, and that is obviously welcome. But that is usually how the life of a consultant is. And there's a lot of travel involved, which is usually what attracts a lot of people. And although it is the pandemic situation right now, I've seen that my seniors who have joined last year are still traveling a lot. and they are partying a lot, and they're having a lot of fun. But trust me, that's not what the job entails. You'll have to work a lot too. They're pulling off 10, 12-hour days, 80-hour weeks sometimes before deadlines. So that is also expected from you. So yeah, that is kind of like what the life of consultant is. Chinmay, do you have anything to add? Is it anything different that you perceive it as?
No, I guess like it's a great place if you don't know what place you want to be at. So it just opens up a lot of roads for you even that you can like use eventually. And other than that, even if you want to become a startup founder, knowing the business perspective of the industry like is pretty good, and you get to make a lot of connections in this job. Which you get to use eventually. Also, like in the industry, the tags that these companies carry, they help you at a lot of places. It's just like you have the IIT tag, and a lot of people consider that you have worked hard at some point in time. So it's similar for this. People would treat you fine. So yeah, that's another thing.
So, Chinmay, I just want to pick your brain a little bit here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were into hardcore coding and stuff, right? So you went to Apple, California for an intern. I think you got a placement also there. So how did you switch? Like, what exactly pushed you towards this field?
I like what I wanted to do is like I eventually wanted to have my own something like pursue my own venture, and I realized that I didn't know much about the business aspect of things, so I wanted to explore that. Also, like I was not too sure whether I want to do like software or ML research or something like that initially. So I thought that pursuing a more generalist role in the start would eventually help me decide better about what to convert finally. Yeah.
Great. And could you tell the kids here also a little bit about the BA digital role and how that'll help, how that is different from the general business analyst role that McKinsey offers, and what to expect during the interview and as well when you start working in the company?
So, by what I've heard, like I haven't started it. So, by what I've heard, it's that everything almost remains the same. The interview process, let's start with the interview. So, you need to have certain skills that show that you have that technical understanding and perspective. So that should reflect on your resume. After that, like in the selection procedure, the rounds, the procedure, the written, and everything, they're pretty much the same. The only difference being that the questions that are posed to you. So we'll talk about case interviews. So the theme of those case interviews might be more inclined towards a digital scenario, like some digital transformation or customer analytics or something like that. So there is a separate segment of McKinsey which exclusively deals with such kind of projects called McKinsey's Digital. So you'll get to work on these projects. So a lot of there are other kind of projects that they help as well. But as a digital BA, you would be staffed on projects which relate to digital transformation, analytics, etc. Yeah. Other
Right.
than that, the work is pretty much the same. 80%, as I've been told, is pretty much the same. You work on pretty much the same things, but yeah, there is this 20% tech aspect attached to it.
Got it. Got it. I think that pretty much covers it. And yeah, I think we can move on, right? Unless you have anything to add. Okay. Now that we've seen like what these companies do and whatever it is that we've said so far, it can only go so far, right? You'll need to look at what they look for in you as well. So that's just one aspect of it. So let's talk about like the selection process of these companies and MBB in specific because we have people from these companies here. So yeah, let's start with McKinsey and we can move on to Bain and BCG. So the McKinsey, more or less the processes followed by McKinsey, BCG and Bain are the same. It's just that the number of interviews and a few minor changes in between are the only ones that you should consider. So McKinsey has first a round of shortlisting, CV shortlisting. So you all must have submitted your CVs by now, I'm hoping, since it's 30th and today's the deadline. So if you have not, then just go ahead and submit it. You don't lose anything by submitting your CV to some company, right? So go ahead and submit your CV to every company that is hiring, I would say. And once the CV shortlisting is done, from usually about 250 to 300 CVs that these companies receive. They shortlist about 20 people. I think that was last year. I'm not sure if that would be the same, but you can expect it to be in similar range. And these 20 people who are shortlisted, We'll then have a PPT. That's what I've been told. So you'll have a presentation from the company executives introducing the company and talking about what to expect from the role. And you will be introduced to the partners of the firm. I'm not sure if you've heard, but I think one of the most famous alumnus who is into consulting is Aditya Sharma. He was Forbes 30 under 30. He was there during our orientation last year, and he told us a lot about what the company does and what kind of work you are expected to do. And after this PPT, you would have a problem-solving test called Embellis. So we discussed this in the last session as well, but I'll quickly put it again. Embellis is like a game. So you will have 3 or 4 rounds. You can actually Google it and you'll find a few videos on YouTube tackling what Embellis is and how to attempt it, or what do you expect when you start that game. So you can just go through that. You don't have to prepare anything. You don't need to practice your quant skills. You don't need to prepare your case structuring or anything as such to attempt Embellis. So once this problem solving assessment is done, we're not actually very sure how it is used, because nobody ever asked us about our Embellis performance or gave us scores or talked about it through the rest of the interview process at all. So even if you don't do well, don't worry about it. Most probably it is just a screening method, and they don't really have a lot of weight associated with that. But again, don't take it lightly as well. So you'll have your Embellis challenge, and as soon as that is done, you'll have interviews starting. So we had almost all of our interviews within a span of 2 days, I think. On the first day, we had 4 or 5 interviews, four interviews, I think, with engagement managers and project leaders in the firm. And on the next day, we had our partner interviews. So within 1 day or within 2 days, all of your interviews will get over. So try to stay active and healthy during this entire process, because if you're sick on that day, then that'll probably ruin your chances. And we'll talk about what exactly happens within the interview process a little later. But this is how everything looks like. Anirudh, are you here? Can you take up and tell us about what Bain does?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Vasanta. So, hi guys. I also thank everyone for the great introduction. I'm sort of the outsider here from IIT Kharagpur, but for all practical purposes, you can consider me similar to Vasanta, Tiyasha, or Chinmay in terms of asking any questions. So, sure, I'll tell you what the Bain process was like last year in my college. This should, however, come with a disclaimer that look, this interview process is decided by people or seniors from your own college. It's possible that a slight variation might be decided by folks at your college, but it will largely be similar in my opinion. So at the first touch point of the company is when they sort of invite you for a webinar with them in the last case. Well, typically when things were offline, they came and you sort of got together at a hotel and the same thing happened there. But this year it'll probably be a webinar. So then they will kind of clear about and they will tell you briefly what the interview process will look like. So this is how it went. You submitted your resume post that. After that, you probably will get the shortlist in around a week. And after that, you will be assigned a buddy. So yeah, the buddy will typically be a senior from your own college. I got one who was a couple of years senior to me. I sort of also knew him when he was in college. So that sort of helps in getting open and comfortable with the buddy. So the buddy is there to kind of help you through the interview process, ask any sort of doubts that you have either about case preparation itself or about the firm, about anything else that you might consider relevant, right? So I did a couple of cases with my buddy, and this spanned around, let's say 2 or 3 weeks. And finally, that was, the day came when, the weekend came when we had the interviews. So about my buddy interactions, right? We were told by the firm that these are non-evaluative. And well, to date, I can't tell you or not. I'll probably know after a bit. But I would say, as a general advice, any sort of interaction that you have with the person at the firm, consider that a formal interaction where you are probably being evaluated since you're not already a colleague there, right? So I would advise you to be at your very best during your buddy interactions, whether or not they are called evaluative. You don't know how that might help you in later if you strike a good chord with them. So yeah, try to form meaningful personal relationships with them. Try to come across as a serious and curious candidate. So yeah. Then we, came to the day of the interview. I personally had, one small thing that we also had was like another screening round, so to say, but that was more to sort of decide the order of interview. So that was like a 15-minute case that I had with another person at the firm, but that was sort of to decide the order of the interviews that may or may not be there in your company. So once we come to the interviews, my first round was with, I think probably the equivalent of engagement manager at Bain. And after that, personally, I was fast tracked to the partner round. There were other people who had more rounds in between. Then I had two partner rounds, and that was it. This process took 1 day for us, and the results were given a few days later. So yeah, we'll probably go deeper into what the interviews were about later, but this is what it was like for Bain.
Thanks, Anirudh. I totally missed out the buddy part of McKinsey hiring as well. So we had each of us were allotted two buddies after the shortlisting process, after the 20 odd people's list was released, and we had about a week of interaction with them. And I solved like a couple of cases with each of them, and one of them was even an IIT Kharagpur alumnus, and who was very very friendly, who's in touch even now. So. Again, like Anirudh suggested and said it very rightly, be very formal with your buddies as long as they don't encourage you to be a little informal. So that was the one thing that I missed. Tiyasha, did I miss anything else with the McKinsey process, or otherwise you can
No,
talk
I
about
think
BCG?
that was it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
tell the group about the BCG process.
So the BCG process is actually very similar, but their shortlisting was actually 2 rounds. So first they had a CV shortlisting, and I think they selected around 30 people in the first shortlist. After that, they had a PPT where they were like talking about what the process is going to be like. And then during the course of the next week, they had 2 rounds. So you were allotted 2 buddies, but these buddies were essentially people who would evaluate you for the next shortlisting. And in that, these interviews could be like telephonic interviews, it could be video interviews, it depended on your buddy as well. So for me, I think one of my buddies informed me 1 day beforehand as to when the case would be, and the next one informed me 10 minutes before my round. So they just called me and they were like, okay, 10 minutes before, they're like, now you're going to have your round. So I was like, okay. But these cases are not like very tough. They're like some basic profitability cases and like estimates which they ask you. After that, like there's another shortlisting. I think this is around 10 people. And then after that, there was like the final interview. So I think we had all 4 rounds on 1 day. So I think 2 rounds initial, and then after that, 2 partner rounds. And I think that was it for that. But all of them was on the same day, and then the result came out on the same day as well.
Right. Even for McKinsey, I think the result was out on the same day.
Yeah,
So
same.
you will not have a lot of suspense after your interview process. It's like
Right.
which is I think a good thing. But yeah.
One difference which I found was, Chinmay, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. Some difficult.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that one difference which I found was especially in the buddies. So, in there, initially you are allotted 2 buddies who will shortlist you, but again, later you are allotted a buddy who does not really do a case with you since there's not much time. However, they might do a case with you, it depends on them. So, one of my buddies is a KGP alumnus, and she was essentially like talking to me about like what to expect and like how to keep calm on the day of the interview. For McKinsey, the difference was that the buddies were allotted a long time back, and both my buddies were really friendly, and they just told me, you know what, this is completely non-evaluative. And I'm pretty sure it was non-evaluative because my buddy just gave me random cases, like 3-4 cases randomly, and she said that I'm just trying to do a pressure test on you to see if this works or not. So for me, I just thought that was non-evaluative. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, adding a bit to the for the digital process, like out of the 2 buddies that I got, one was from the general practice and the other was a subject matter expert in McKinsey Digital. And I just got to do one case with the general, with the first buddy, and the domain expert didn't actually do any case. And yeah, I'm pretty sure they were non-evaluative because just one case.
Right. Chinmay, over here, I wanted to ask you something that was asked by someone in the last session. So, when the shortlist is being released, how do they choose people, whether they are for BA or BA Digital? Do you fill a preference, or does the company do it on their own terms? How does it happen?
So what happened was prior to last year, they didn't actually open the digital role for IIT Kharagpur. It was for Delhi, Kanpur, Madras, and Bombay. But last time they saw our resumes and then they shortlisted us on their own. They didn't actually ask for a preference. I mean, people could have reverted, but I didn't object to that. So. probably not. Also about the cases, on the in the partner rounds, four of my cases were from topics that relate to technology and digital customer analytics, app churn, and stuff like that. And I had three partner rounds. So one of those was a normal case, a normal profitability case that you would usually find in a book. Yeah. Other than that, it was same.
Great. Great. I think we've covered this fairly. So let's move on to talk about what exactly happens in the interview, right? So what is the interview experience like, and what exactly do you expect? So till now we've seen like what is the selection process and everything. So let's look at the interview, starting with McKinsey. Interviews ranging from 35 to 45 minutes on an average. And almost in every interview, we spend the first 15-20 minutes talking about my past experiences and the challenges that I faced in my life and what have I learned from them and all of that. So I found that all of these interviewers were very, very interested in my personal life and in what kind of a person I am. So there's something that I've heard a long time ago, which I think applies here. So what a consultant looks for in the HR aspect or in the personal experience aspect of the interview, which lasts the first 15-20 minutes, is whether or not they would enjoy spending those 2 or 3 hours on a flight with you, wherever when they're traveling with you to a project location or a client location. So they kind of ask you questions. So that's what you are supposed to project in these interviews as well, that you're a very friendly and friendly person who likes to share their experiences, talk about your interests, and be very conversational in that part of the interview. So that's how it started, mine as well. She asked me some question regarding my experience at a POR on campus, and then then it took off from there, where there were multiple questions regarding different parts of the answer that I gave. So they don't have like a set of 2 or 3 questions prepared beforehand. That's what I've realized, and they just pick it up from whatever you tell them in your introduction or on your resume run through or whatever that is asked in the beginning. And this part of the interview was very, very important. And I feel like a lot of people do not take it seriously because they think that HR questions hai, kya hi padna, ho jayega, last minute mein and all that. But you cannot create scenarios or situations on the spot if you have not tried to do that beforehand. So I would say go over your campus experiences, your PORs, your internships, and think about the challenging situations that you have faced at every step of the way. What have you learned, and what skills of yours does it exhibit, and what weaknesses of yours have you learned to cover up, and what are your strengths? You need to talk about all of this and give examples at the same time in this personal experience part of the interview. That is very, very important, especially for McKinsey. And yeah, so it lasts for about 15 to 20 minutes. And once that is done, we then move on to a case interview. So in this case interview, you can be asked anything ranging from a guesstimate or a profitability case or a market entry case or a completely unconventional case. So you could be asked anything, and a lot of times, especially in partner interviews, the unconventional cases asked to you are from something that you've done in the past. So, for example, just giving you an example, I interned at Procter and Gamble, and I worked in the fabric care module where we worked with the detergent industry. So, a guesstimate that can be thrown to you is estimate the amount of detergent that is consumed on a yearly basis in India. So that is something that is from your experiences that the partner has just picked up and asked you. So you can expect these kind of questions. So go over your CV, go over your resume, think about the different questions that might emerge out of it, and prepare for that as well. And be very observant about your surroundings. And you cannot really know beforehand what question will be asked. So you need to be prepared with to deal with some uncertainty. And yeah, so all of my cases were not that difficult when it came to McKinsey. They were relatively on the easy or medium side, and they were just trying to understand how I structure the case when I solve, how logical is my approach, and whether or not I can deal with uncertainty in terms of the range of cases that that I'm faced with. So that is basically what happens in an interview. So you can think about it as 15 to 20 minutes of personal experience and another 25 minutes of case solving. So that is kind of how an interview with McKinsey looks like. So every interview is the same. It's just that the people who would be taking the interview would differ from one interview to another. So that is very quickly about what McKinsey interviews look like. Anirudh, can you talk about Bain a little bit here?
Yeah, sure. So Typically, you can expect similar stuff from a case interview. The one difference that was very stark in my Bain interview with what Vasanta described here was that the HR part was not very pronounced. The interview started. I was just asked like a basic question, something like why do you want to join consulting or something like that. But that seemed more of like a question to get me talking, get the ball rolling, etc., and just get me comfortable, and not whether not really them trying to evaluate something out of me. So after that question was done, they really jumped into the case itself, and this was the case for me for all my interviews at Bain actually. So about talking about the case itself, how the case goes is actually pretty much dependent on the person in front of you. They can conduct it in many sorts of ways. Like you've often heard, it can be like a pressure case where you're asked a lot of questions and you have to answer quickly. And the challenge really is actually not to say something stupid. But sometimes a case can be like them allowing you to speak a lot more, you leading it, and them evaluating you sort of silently. My cases were, well, two of them were with relatively calmer people, so it was like a very normal, chilled out conversation. One of them was like a slightly more pressurized situation where where I had to change my thought process very quickly based on whatever he was saying. He sort of cut me out on many turns. So yeah, you can expect a lot of things there, and it's good to be prepared for many sorts of situations. Perhaps try to simulate that in your preparation. But yeah, it was pretty much standard case interviews for me.
Right. Thanks, Anirudh. Tiyasha, can you tell us about the BCG and how was it different from McKinsey since you have attempted both?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with BCG since that was like a little bit different from this, and then I'll add on to whatever you said about McKinsey. Right? So starting with BCG, I think the biggest difference I found was that there was no HR round for me at all. So in all of my 4 interviews, I think I was asked only one HR question, and that was in the final partner round where they just asked me, where did you intern and all, and they were just looking at my CV and just like talking casually about it, but it was not really an HR round. Apart from that, the difference was that there were a lot of cases. So in my 4 rounds, I had to solve 6 cases. In my very first round, I had to solve 2 cases, and in my last partner round, I had to solve 2 cases. And I could not finish 2 of my cases. So the second case, I could not finish in a lot of cases in both the rounds, and it ran on more than an hour. So I think that was the difference. The cases weren't too difficult. The first cases were not very difficult. The second ones were kind of difficult, where the partner or the people just kept on changing the track, and it was kind of confusing. So that was a little bit stressful. But apart from that, I think the cases were very similar in both this BCG and McKinsey. In McKinsey, one thing which I found out was that it depended very much on the interviewer whether or not they wanted to ask you personal interview questions. So in my first round, they asked me like 5 or 10 minutes of HR, and then after that, they focused on the case. And in the next round, I was just given a guesstimate, and then they focused more on the HR. And then in my partner rounds, one partner did not ask me any HR questions. They just solved a case with me. And another did like 30 minutes of HR proper with me, and then like started to solve cases based on what I like answered in my HR round. And it ran on for more than an hour. So I think the interviews were very varied, but I think like Anirudh said and like Vasanta said, it's very important to keep your cool and like not get stressed out at any point of time, since the interviewers did not really give an indication of what they are thinking. They might be friendly, they might be very stressful, they might just be poker face, and you just have to deal with all of it.
Great. Chinmay, is anything different in terms of what happens in the interview with BA Digital? I know you've already covered it a bit, but is there anything else?
Yeah, one distinct thing in the HR questions, I was asked in every single interview why you want to go to consulting where you have a CV which supports tech. So you must have a very good answer for that. And yeah, other than that, yeah, they were trying to like, for me, these HR questions occupied a considerable bit of the interview process. And they were trying to basically understand whether I'm motivated enough in the thing that I've pursued previously or not. So if you've done tech right or not, so they even asked me questions about what courses should one do, books to refer and stuff like that. So just to check on all of this. So yeah, justifying that would be a part of HR, which I think is different.
Great. All right. So if guys throughout the session, if you have any questions, just drop it in the comments in the chat section, and we'll address them at the end. So yeah, let's move on from here. What's next? Okay. What skills are looked for in these companies, in these consulting companies? Right. So this is a very open-ended thing that they look for, these consulting companies. So they just want people who can go anywhere and learn from the scratch and do what is required. So that is it, right? So you can be thrown into working with a client who is in the cement manufacturing industry, or you could be working with some multinational bank, or you could be working with a startup, or you could be working anywhere. So they want people who are very dynamic and who have the ability to accommodate and learn in whatever environment that they're put in. So that I think is the basic thing what any consulting company looks for. And since they're putting you in a client-facing role, they look for good communication skills, a person who is presentable, and a person who who's a little more extroverted, I would say, for lack of better word. But yeah, that is kind of what a person is looking for when they're interviewing you for any of these consulting firms. And I've heard a lot of people ask questions like, what internships should I do to be eligible for these consulting firms, or what PORs should I be a part of? And I feel like the only thing that you need to worry about is using your time wisely. So I've seen people who have not gotten a CDC internship, who got an off-campus internship, and still got shortlisted and got into the final rounds of these companies. I've seen people who have gotten day one internship and still not get shortlisted. I've seen people who have a 9-pointer CGPA, who have only studied in their entire life, and who have published papers, who have gone on research internships and still get shortlisted and come to the final rounds. So what they look for is just people who are doing whatever they're doing really well, if I have to put it that way. And that's what I think. I'd love to hear from you guys, Anirudh, Chinmay, and Tiyasha. What do you think? Let's start with Tiyasha.
Yeah. So I don't really think there are any specific skills they look for, because I can't really identify a specific skill. So I think even during our McKinsey onboarding, they just told us that we don't really care what you know, because we'll teach you. We just want to know that you know how to grasp things easily. And I think that is one thing that's important. Apart from that, I think you covered all of it.
Right. All right. Chinmay and Anirudh, if you want to add anything, otherwise we can move on, I guess. But that's basically, I know it's very open-ended and we didn't really answer your question to the point, but really we don't know how to answer this question. We don't know what they're looking for. But yeah.
Yeah, I would just like to make a comment on one thing. Like, many people think that PORs are very much required for CV shortlisting. So I don't think that's the case. Yeah, that is one big major myth that people have.
Right. So guys, if you still have time, no, like if you have like 4 hours. So if you've thought so far that, or if you have friends who have thought that they don't have PORs, they don't have D1 internships, they don't have like research projects or international experiences, then and if they did not apply, then I don't think that makes sense, because even I was completely shocked when I saw the shortlist, because there was nothing common in between like 2 or 3 people who were in the shortlist. So I think you should really, like, there's no harm in giving it a shot, right? So don't think that you're not eligible if you don't fit in a certain criteria. That's what I would say. But yeah, moving on. I'm not able to switch the slide. Yeah. Okay, so essentials of a good CV for a consulting profile, how to make sure your CV has an edge in terms of academic and extracurriculars. Okay, so I think this kind of again builds on what we discussed so far, right? Tiyasha, can you take this question up?
Sure. So I think one of the major essentials, at least from what I saw from the different people, was that your CV should have certain spikes. So these spikes can be anything in what you've done in your career so far or what you've done in your college life so far. So it can be like maybe you have an entrepreneurship spike, maybe you have like a CGPA or academic spike, maybe you have like a POR spike or an extracurricular spike or anything which you've done, or maybe sometimes sports or other things, right? That's anything which you've done in specifically then. However, if you think that you're worried about what kind of a spike is, then I think I'd just say focus on three things because three is like the consulting number. So just try to focus on three things. In terms of academics, I think having decent projects or having decent internships, especially certain good brand names, do help. Also, having like a good CGPA above 8.5, above 9, it always helps you in just like overall rounding of your CV. Apart from that, I think that's it pretty much.
Also, I want to ask you guys, is 8.5 a hard cutoff for these companies, or what? What do you guys, what are your opinions?
I don't think so. I think Tanay
Yeah.
had a CGPA less than 8.5.
Yes.
And even Utkarsh didn't have like an above 9. I think it was again 8.5-ish or 8.5, like something around that. So I have seen, like we have personally seen people who get shortlisted without proper 9 pointer or 8.9 CGPA. How does it work in your campus, Anirudh? Is it the same or? Uh,
Yeah, I've also seen people with like sub 8.5 CGPAs get through. So I don't think that's like a hard bound. But yeah, I'd agree with Tiyasha that it's probably something that's positive, viewed as positive.
Right, right. Yeah, so that is it. But I think the ship has sailed on this for the people who are attending this right now. So you guys can't really change your CV right now. So let's move on. Yeah. Okay, so what are the resources to use during case prep? Chinmay, can you talk about this?
Yeah, so there are certain videos and like digital content that you find online. So you can use these videos. There are videos by CIC that you'll find on YouTube. There are also certain books. So a name of some of those we'll add somewhere in the comments or in the post of this group. Some books would be CIC Case Compendium, Day One, ISB Casebook, IM Casebook. Uh, what I'd suggest is not to overdo stuff. I think the cases are primitively based on first level thinking. So doing too much, I think that also hurts in the longer run. Yeah, if you guys want to add something.
Yeah, so how many cases did you guys do? Like I think I did over my course of prep, I've done like 60 or something. So if you're comfortable sharing 60 or 70 cases, but I started like 15 days before the first interview. So I think our first interview was on 13th September, and I started my prep on 29th August when BCG released their their CV submission notice. So that was kind of how quick everything was for me. But what about you guys? How was it for you?
I did three.
You did 3 cases.
Yeah, I did three cases for prep and then like three with BCG buddies and then yeah, I can.
Oh my god. Seriously, I did not know this. 3 cases. I think you're giving a lot of hope to a few people here.
Yeah, I'll add a lot to the last minute prep thing.
Yeah, I would just say do not try this at home. Yeah, even I did around a similar number, Vasanta, probably 60, 70. Tiyasha and I also did some preparation together. So
So you guys knew each other from Relay Campus, is it? Same group?
No, from childhood.
Oh, seriously, I did not know this.
yeah,
Okay.
Tiyasha and I were schoolmates a couple of years.
Oh, amazing. Great. So yeah, guys. So you've seen like we have done some very weird amount of prep cumulatively. So there is no one way to do this, and I'm sure there's a folder that is already being passed on among you guys with all of the resources. Those are more than enough. Don't listen to people who say, मैंने ये भी कर लिया, मैं वो भी कर लिया. It doesn't matter. It's just about how much you learn from each case and spend your time wisely from now on till your first interview. And I guess you'll be in a good place. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Let's move on. How to find a case group And on what metrics should you form a group? And what is the ideal time to start preparing for it? So let me start with the last part of the question. What is the ideal time to start preparing for it? And that would be now. So if you have not started, then please do start. And I mean, I wouldn't say like you've. I mean, obviously it would have been better if you had started a little earlier, but you can start now and still like be okay. So just start right away. And I'm hoping that the people who are on this call have a case group already. And first I'll tell you why it's important to have a case group, right? So if you don't have a case group, then you're practically reading cases, which does not solve any purpose, because when you're reading cases, you do not know how you would react if that was thrown to you and in a conversational sense. So it is very important to practice cases with real people who are acting as the interviewer while they're solving the case. So that is very important. And the second thing why I think case groups are important is, for example, let's look at the two main resources that anybody uses, right? I would say it's CIC and Day One. So these are the first two things that you should finish if you're sitting for your consulting interviews. And both cumulatively have, I think, about 50 cases, 50 or 55 cases or something of that sort. So if you have to do them all, like if you just have one person who you're solving cases with, then you probably have to read 25 cases to be able to make the other person solve those 25 cases, right? If you split it half-half. So you're wasting a lot of cases just reading them if you don't have a case group. So have a case group of 3 or 4 people, so that you are spending less time reading cases and spending more time in actually doing them with your friends. So that is why it's important to have a case group. And another thing is, if you are doing with friends, then they'll probably help you learn something that they are good at, and at the same time point out the things that you are not good at. So it is very important to have honest people who will tell you on your face that, I don't like the way you're doing this. You should improve that. So do not make a case group with yes men who will just go and tell you that you're doing well even if you're really not doing well. So that is the only thing I would say is what's important for a case group. Form it with people who you know well and who can be honest to you. And second, who you will have something to learn from. Maybe they are good at something that you can learn from while doing cases with them. And another thing is who are as committed as you are, because a lot of times you form a case group in the beginning and your friends drop out because they're not interested in this profile anymore. And that creates a lot of issues later on. So try to be with people who are as committed as you are. So that I think is the only criteria we should look at while forming a case group. Chinmay, did you have a case group, or did you like solve them?
No, I didn't have a case group.
Okay. So I think Chinmay will have a lot to add in the last question, I think. When you want to talk about what are the last minute things to do when you're not expecting a shortlist and then something pops up on your email one fine day. But okay, Tiyasha and Anirudh, what do you guys think? Is there anything that you'd like to add?
So I think for me, while I had a case group, I think for me, I did more individual prep, one-on-one prep with a lot of people. And I think that helped me because it gave me exposure to a lot of different kind of interviewers. So I think while a case group, like you said, does help a lot of people, I think it's also very individual based as to who we are prepping with. And the most important thing is you need to do it with people you know will be harsh with you and like be brutally honest. So I remember I did my very first case with Anirudh. And he had been prepping for a few days before that, right? And my very first case was this very hard case from IITM, I think day 1.2, and it was a super random case. And I had absolutely no clue what I was doing in that entire case. And he's just like, you did not get anything. He's just like, no. And I was like, what do I do? But I think that case gave me a lot of confidence because I was like, you know what, how much worse can it get? It did get worse, but that did give me a lot of confidence. So yeah, the major thing is you just need to take feedback from people and trust the people you are doing cases with.
You're on mute, Vasanta.
Sorry, thank you. So I was saying that the only thing that you need to be sure of is don't read cases, solve it with real people, and solve it with people who will be very honest with you and who will be willing to spend that time in giving feedback over how you solved a case, right? So that I think is what you need to keep in mind. So Right. So we are more or less in the last moment right now. So we have, ideally looking the process, your interviews might start in like 10, 15 days, I think, but you should be prepared for anything. So Chinmay, just giving it over, what do you think are the last moment things that you should do?
I'd say that there might be two strategies. So either you've like prepared before. In that case, you guys can add, but probably you can revise the frameworks, try to get feedback from people outside your group to have like a different perspective, or recapitulate what you were thinking when you make mistakes while solving the cases, and other things that you guys can add. But yeah, if you haven't prepped till now, a good thing would be like to start with CIC videos. I mean, you can just watch them, think how you would solve, and then compare it with what they say. Then, like, you can probably get on a book to have some formal kind of information coming through. You should also like try to schedule meetings with other people unless you have a case group. So if you don't, then you can probably schedule meetings with seniors or people who have been prepping up seriously, and like treat the feedback that you get from these meetings very seriously and like try to mold how you think. And another like thing that I would suggest is don't try to solve an individual case when you're doing a case. Just try to understand what the interviewer wants to know. Like it's like similar to what some people did in JE, but you should rather focus on the larger scale of things, how to approach these cases rather than how to solve a one specific case. Because if you solve too many cases, probably you get caught up when you see a new case and try to fit it in the previous frameworks. And yeah, use your buddies judiciously. I mean, yeah, consider the feedbacks that you get from them as well as the feedbacks that you get interviewing in different companies, so that your performance improves unless you make it through in the first go. Yeah. You're on mute, Vasanta.
Okay, why do I do this so often? Anyways, so for people who have been preparing, right, I would say there's one thing that I did which really helped me. So after every case that I solved, I had this Excel sheet or a rough sheet where I listed down cases one after the other after solving them, and I used to write down the mistakes that I've made and what I had to learn from each case over there. And in the days before my first interview, I used to go over my mistakes and consciously try not to do them again. So if you do want to spend the next few days in doing a lot of cases, then this is a good way, because I used to solve like 3 or 4 cases a day, and it used to be very difficult to keep track of my mistakes and the feedback after a point of time. So this is a very good thing that you can do if it works out for you. um, Tiyasha, do you have anything specific that you did
Yeah.
to share?
Yeah, so I think what I did was very similar, but instead of like just instead of an Excel sheet, I used a diary. So I think I did around 70 cases plus the cases which I read. So what I did was, like, for every case I wrote from where I did that case, what were my mistakes and what I could have done better, and what was the feedback which I got. And I highlighted the repeated mistakes every time, so that like when I was revising at like for the last 2 3 days, I did not do any cases in the last 2 days. I was just revising this diary, and I had a pattern of mistakes, and I think that is what I tried to keep in mind consciously. So I think that thing really helped me to revise stuff. Apart from that, just the frameworks, and be
Yeah.
flexible with your frameworks. Make your own custom frameworks.
Correct. So don't just follow the frameworks that have been given to you by your seniors. A lot of times they probably don't work for you, work for your style of solving a case. So towards the end of your prep, have your own framework which you are completely thorough with, familiar with, and navigate at any point in time. So that would be a very good thing to do. But what about you, Anirudh? Did you do something different?
Yeah, no, a lot of it was similar, trying to narrow down on the mistakes. One thing that I did slightly was that I found that I was making a lot of silly calculation errors in case prep, right? And obviously that's like a total no-no in terms of case prep, as repeated by many seniors. So that was something that was bugging me. So in the last few days, I kind of did some targeted practice to improve upon that. Tiasha is probably laughing because I essentially made her, just give me, give me give me maths problems to solve, like not just maths problems, but like cases involving calculation. But that eventually amounted to me just doing some math and she saying that, no, this is wrong. So that was some targeted practice for calculations. Apart from that, yeah, a lot of similar things as you said. I think one thing that people like tend to leave for the last moment is HR prep. And so the last 15 days, I and like a lot of friends of mine uh, were essentially doing HR prep, right? And like just trying to chalk out what my overall story would be. That was more for the McKinsey interview, but I never got to give it. But that was how I spent the last 15 days, kind of just finalizing whatever I had not been able to, nail down in the previous days. Not doing so much of case prep.
Right. Right. So yeah, I guess that covers it. Is there another question? Is there? Can we move on to the next slide? Tips for acing interviews. This is very open-ended. So I have only one thing to say over here. Personally, it's that don't try to think of it. Think of the person who's solving the case with you, right? The interviewer, as someone who knows the solution and is just trying to confuse you. Don't think of it that way. Think of them as your client who really has absolutely no idea what the issue is, and you're trying to help them solve it. And don't get nervous. Don't think of it as an exam. Don't think of it even as an interview, I would say. Just think of it as a random case that you're solving with a friend on a random day. So that, I think, helps ease out a lot of pressure on these interviews. And another thing is, on your interview day, since IIT Kanpur and Kharagpur, both of these campuses have offline, off-campus sort of processes. You can expect to have like 3 or 4 interviews at a stretch on a single day, and don't let one interview, which you might have not done really well, affect the rest of the interviews on that day, because. Believe it or not, in one of my McKinsey interviews, I think it was a partner interview, there was, even I am very bad at basic calculations under pressure, like Anirudh just mentioned, right? So I had to do 5 into 5, and I wrote it as 15, and I solved the case. And I obviously got the wrong answer. And the interviewer asked me, Vasanta, this is my McKinsey partner interview, minded. And he asked me, Vasanta, this number doesn't seem correct. Can you go over the process? Can you go over the calculations again? And I was going over it, and I again said the same thing, like 5 into 5 into 3, 15 into 3. And he actually pointed it out to me, Vasanta, 5 into 5 is not 15, right? It's 25. And I lost my mind. Oh my God, how did I do this? And I kind of, my entire rest of the interview was very mellow, although there was only very little left after that to do. But I'm still here. Like, they did take me because I did the next quant intense case really well. So you'll get multiple chances to prove yourself. Do not think that the one mistake that you made in the first interview of your day is gonna cancel out your chances at this entire process itself. So don't think that you will get multiple chances. And a lot of times it is expected that under pressure you make some silly mistakes that is understood by some people. So it is a very luck dependent process as well. So don't stress. Do not compare with your friends. Oh my God, I had only 2 interviews. You had 3, or oh, I had 3. Why did I have 3 when you had 2? Don't. There is no pattern as such in this. So just be by yourself, relax, and try to have a good experience in the interview. Try to have a good conversation, and try to just give your best on that day. That's what I would say. But Anirudh, how was your interview? Do you have any tips that you want to tell these people?
Yeah, something on very similar lines actually. So that was my let me remember. That was my first partner interview, and that was like a very long, I think an hour or more. And at the end of it, I thought that I'd done some things very badly. I was getting overcritical, nothing specific there. And for some reason, I just thought that, look, this is probably the last interview of the day. I had called up a senior who was helping me with the case process, and I just started cribbing about it. I took off my tie, took off my coat, etc. And I was expecting there won't be any more interviews. So suddenly I get this message that, oh, your next interview is in 15 minutes. And I mean, I literally have nothing. Like, I have all of my formals lying around everywhere. My tie is undone and everything. So I literally had to ask for some extra time to prepare there. And I was just kicking myself that, look, what is this? Like, I should just have been ready for all interviews, right? So just don't throw in the towel before something wrong happens. Be prepared at all times. That's literally something that's really valued in a consultant's job. Don't be out of character at any point. there'll be a few other things that I found important. So one thing was that all of my case interview preparation was done video on, simply because bandwidth issues or whatever. And one day before the interview, I find that, look, I've never even done a case with my video on. I don't know how my face looks in a video, etc., etc. And like a lot of people tell me that, like, I have this problem of a bad resting bitch face. So I spent one entire day just trying to rectify that, trying to like look lively, look interested on a video call. That's something that I had like, really actively in my mind. So that thing. So just try to get some very specifics covered where you'll be sitting, etc. Be relatively chilled out. Don't think of yourself as this college student who doesn't know anything, and the other person as this partner who is this incredible godlike figure, right? What they're really checking is whether you can hold your own in front of a person who is way older in terms of both experience, age, and stature, if you may say that. So yeah, you really have to think of yourself as that you belong there, and you can really like hold a normal conversation with them, as Vasanta was saying. So yeah, that.
What about you, Chinmay? Do you have anything specific that you want to share with these people?
Yeah, one thing that I noticed was that probably sometimes the question that they pose you might be related to the technical field that you pursued previously, but try not to go into too much depth about it. So I was asked a question about a field that I pursued, but they expected general level fundas from me and not like going in too depth while trying to solve the case. So that might you should keep in mind that the person doing it is not a subject matter expert, like especially in the partner route, and they probably expect only the high level things from you. Other than that, yeah, just smiling and smiling unnecessarily, that helps a lot of time. So yeah, you can probably try that. That has helped me.
Great. Tiyasha, if you stop laughing, you can share your experiences.
See, the one who laughs most aces most interviews. I see a connection here.
Yes. Wait. Right. So I think one thing for the interviews is, I think, admitting your mistakes early on. So if you're confused, just tell the interviewer that you are confused, or like say that I'm not really sure and this is what I'm going to do. In most cases, the interviewers are generally very friendly and they just help you ahead or like remove the block for you. So just be honest and do not fumble down and dig yourself into a hole. I think that is one thing. I think another thing would be, so I think, like Vasanta, even I made a math mistake in one of my interviews. I think it was in my BCG interview, and I made a simple million billion mistake, and they had to point it out that, you know what, this does not seem correct, and I had to recheck my calculation. And I was like, oh, again, I made a million billion mistake again. So just don't worry about it. Just be confident and say, okay, I made a mistake here. Don't try to cover it up or anything. Be honest and just go forward. And another thing is just to be super confident. Like, even if you think that you're messing up completely and you have no idea what you're doing. So I think this happened in one of my partner rounds. They gave me this thing and then they just kept asking me, okay, why are you doing this? Are you sure about doing this? Are you sure about doing this? Do you really have a logic for this? And I just had to keep doing. And I was like, okay, if I'm making a mistake here, then I just do it. If there's a mistake, then I'll go on to this, then I'll go on to this. They just want your thought process. They don't really always need you to solve the case. So just be confident in what you're doing and keep explaining it to them. And be open to feedback which the interviewers are giving you at that point.
Great. Those are some very interesting tips that we've gotten from all these people. Can we move on to the next slide? I think we've shared a lot of fun days so far. So unless there's anything specific that we might have missed out that someone wants to share, I think we can skip this part as well. Can we move on? Great. So that's kind of it from us. I know we've been going on for an hour now. So do you guys have any questions? I think we can also address the ones that have been asked in the Google form that we shared. So if someone from Communiqué can just maybe
Yeah, I
read
will.
out the questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read out the questions that you can answer.
Yeah, Riddhi, your audio is very low. Is it just me or?
Yeah, it's feeble.
Hello,
No, not
am I
not very audible.
audible?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll continue.
Yeah.
My audio has some issues. I think someone else should continue. Wait, I'll mute right now.
Sure. Meanwhile, there are some questions in the chat that I see. How would you shortlist a good consulting CV? We've covered that. Particular resume suggestion for better chance of clearing screening rounds. Aryan, I hope your resume is ready by now. but yeah, we've talked about that as well. Adnan has a question specifically for Chinmay, I think. Did your experience in ML, like foreign internships, projects, and research papers, give you an edge?
I think it did because during the CV shortlisting, I think that definitely should have been one of the things that they shortlisted me for. I mean, they are looking for things that basically whatever you pursued it well, right? So these are just markers and pointers that indicate that. Other than that, yeah, in the interviews as well, people ask questions around these, and I was able to justify. And that sounded like an interesting conversation. So yeah, I guess it did.
Right. There's another question. What type of internships to do and focus on if someone's very sure of pursuing consulting? So I would say, I mean, whatever you do, try to do it with a big company and try to do it well in such a way that you have stories to talk about. So when an interviewer asks you, what did you do in this internship, you should have a really good answer that you're proud of. So that I think is the only thing, and obviously foreign exposure helps. Working with big people in the industry helps. So anything of that sort. And CDC, obviously, if you have a day one internship, then that is great. Even if you don't have CDC, try to get a good internship off campus. A lot of people do that and still make it to the shortlist. But I don't think there's one single type of internship that will guarantee your chances, or if you do a certain internship, then it'll make or break your chances of consulting. It doesn't work that way. But if you're really interested in getting consulting experience, then you can work in you can intern in a few consulting companies as well. And you learn a lot about what to expect when you actually go join a consulting company. But Tiyasha, Chinmay, Anirudh, if you have anything to add. Please provide some tips for GD rounds. I don't think we have any GD rounds, do we? Tiyasha, were you saying something?
No, I was just saying that in the internships now, it's just, I think the only common factor which I saw was that everybody who got shortlisted had at least one good brand on their CV. So I think apart from that, that brand can be in any sector and they didn't really care. They just wanted you to have a good story as to why you chose that internship. Apart from that, I don't think it really matters.
Also, other thing that I saw in my batch who are joining McKinsey right now, like two of them had pursued their startups out of college, so they took a deferred placement. So I think that also should ideally help.
All right. Um, do we have any more questions? Should we have a plan B if you're opting for consulting given the selection ratio is not very high? Good question. In my opinion, irrespective of whether or not you're interested in consulting, the case prep and this entire process of doing estimates and cases is really helpful even in your full-time recruitment that you'll have in December. And the only good thing about the way the process happens in IIT Kharagpur is probably that you're done with the process by the end of August, right? And you still have September, October, and November to prepare for your full-time recruitments in December. So you can, if you're looking for coding, you can actually really work on it in these next 3 months. Or if you're looking for finance or analyst roles, whatever it is, you will get a lot of time to prepare. So I mean, obviously, like you can't really have a plan. You can't say that I'll only do consulting and I'll not do anything else. So give it a shot. Even if you don't make it, then you'll learn a lot in the process and it'll definitely help you in December. That's what I think. But love to hear from the others.
I think that even if you don't have a plan B, just going in with the feeling that you have, because like the placements are in December, that would help you a lot in these interviews as well, would make you more confident. So obviously you have a plan B and there is like enough time for the placements as well. So there's not much to think about that right now, I guess. You could just apply and see about it later.
How do we tackle a situation where you don't see how to go further ahead in a case? Tiyasha, can you answer this?
Sure. So I think I had this in two of my cases. I just asked the interviewer, what should I do? I just told them, "Ki I have done it here. This is my logic till here, and I'm not really sure what you want me to do. So could you just help me out here?" I just asked them for help. They helped me out.
As simple as that.
It is. They just want to know how much we know. They know that you can't know everything. So it's important to ask for help when needed, but like not ask for help immediately, obviously. Just like when you've tried everything out.
Right. What can possibly be a good question to ask at the end to the interviewer? All right. So, in these off-campus interviews, and even in if it does happen on campus, you'll get to know who your interviewer is, like probably 10-15 minutes before the interview, and you wouldn't know a lot about that person. And sometimes, if you just simply ask a question after stalking their LinkedIn profile, it might come across as a little creepy. So, in the beginning, in every interview, just before they ask you to introduce yourself, a lot of times these interviewers will introduce themselves to you. So listen very carefully at what they're saying, but definitely also look at their LinkedIn profile before the interview and keep it in mind as well. And you can ask a few open-ended questions like, why did you choose this industry, or how is it working for the company? Do you can ask if they say that they're working with, let's say, electric vehicles, then you can ask how why did you choose this particular field or this particular project. You can ask them about their experience, and you can ask anything basically that is a little specific to them, but don't ask anything stupid. I don't think I wouldn't say you should ask them something like, should I how is BCG better than McKinsey and Bain? Please don't ask these kind of questions. They can take offense at these questions. But yeah, almost anything else is okay, I would say. What about you guys? Do you have any go-to questions in mind when you don't have anything in mind? You just ask them. Tiyasha and Chinmay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely had like a couple of go-to questions, right? Because at the end of the interview, you're pretty nervous about how your interview went, and that like often you will not have enough time to think of something on the spot. Please have a go-to question, or else you might end up making a fool out of yourself. Like just think of the question at the end as like something that you just don't have to flunk, right? It's okay if you don't ask an amazing question that blows away the interviewer's mind. It's okay if you don't do that because you have the rest of the case interview to impress the person, right? But just like don't do something stupid there. It's like one thing that like one sort of template that I followed was that I only asked questions like the answer to which I was actually interested in hearing, right? So like because I thought that look, if I just ask a question and if I'm not interested in what they're saying, or if I don't want to ask a follow-up, like if I just ask a boring question which I just do not want to ask anything more upon, then I'll probably just bore myself and that'll not like come off as ingenuine, right? So I typically ask questions about look how does like a day in your life work, or like something that I actually cared about. So yeah, that's good. Don't try to impress them because they know much more than you. They can like you can't impress them with your knowledge. Don't just pick up some random fact from the internet and be like, oh, what about this? So yeah, just take that thing easy, right? It's just one question at the end.
Right. Okay. Unless Tiyasha, Chinmay, do you have something to add? Yeah. Go ahead.
So I think I did the whole LinkedIn thing, but by the time the interview ended, I had completely blanked out by then. So I had a set of go-to questions like Anirudh said, but my questions were more focused towards the person themselves. Instead of asking them about like what a consulting is or what happens there, I would just try to ask them about their own personal experiences and try to ask a positive question to end the interview on a happier note. And I think that turned out well for me because I remember one of the partners which was sharing his story about how he went to Russia, how he like did stuff there, and I think that was really interesting. So yeah, just ask positive questions is my thing. Don't try to enter the interview like positively instead of negatively.
Right. Okay. How to build skills to become a confident communicator. Okay, I don't think, I mean, so basically, when you're, like Tiyasha said, right, confidence is a projection. I feel like a lot of times you're not confident yourself, but you have to show that you're confident. So even if you're confused, if you're not sure about what you're doing, just try to sound like you know what you're doing. Try to sound like you have a plan. Try to sound like you're asking a valid question. So if there are multiple ways of asking a question, right? So either you can be submissive and be very doubtful about yourself and say, okay, do you think you can tell me what the revenues are for this company in in the last 2 years? That is one way of asking a question. And you can also ask, okay, I think one important question that should be addressed here is the trend of revenues in the last few years. Do we have any data on that? So there are multiple ways of asking the same question. So try to practice to sound more confident, to sound like you know what you're doing, sound like you have practiced, irrespective of how well your practice has been. And it's just perception. So I don't think there's something particular that you can do to become a confident communicator. It just comes from practice. But that is what I think. But definitely, I'm sure the others have better answers for this question. What do you guys think?
I think like to just practice stepping out of your comfort zone and trying to speak with people, empathizing with them, and speaking confidently when you don't know a lot of stuff about them. I guess that helps. That's a good way to practice.
Right. And if you don't know something, just admit that you don't know, and it's completely okay, because obviously a person cannot know everything. So don't lose out your confidence when you're solving a case that you have absolutely no idea about. Yeah, try to speak in English while you're solving cases. Try to actually treat your friend as an interviewer and not as your friend. Yeah, when you're practicing cases, be very focused on your communication. Take feedback on that as well. Do you think the way I framed this question was correct? Do you think I could have framed it better? Did you feel like I was stammering at any point in time? Ask these kind of questions to your friends who are making you solve cases. I think that helps as well.
Yeah, I just add to that saying that, well, I'll really address this answer to someone who is going to have their interview in a couple of weeks. Am I audible? The video is breaking a little bit, so am I speaking over someone or something? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I was saying that I'll address this answer to someone who has their interview a couple of weeks later. If you're at any other stage in your life, then like you can just practice that for like a year or so. I was saying that, look, don't put the interviewer or anyone from any of the firms on a pedestal, right? Just think of yourself as, I mean, who is pretty much, if you are shortlisted, or even if you're not actually, but if you are shortlisted for any of the firms, then they really look at you as a person who can be with them, right? So don't look at yourself as someone whom they're evaluating, but like someone who can be a potential colleague. Just think of them yourself as equals. Think that, look, you have done well enough in life to be here. You have a lot of options. So really don't stress out. I think, going into this with a lot of confidence will allow you to be more of yourself.
Great. There's another question: is BCG not much focused on CV once we're shortlisted? So we really don't know, right? I mean, we don't know whether they have the CV in front of you while they're interviewing you, or whether they've never looked at your CV, or whether they've actually taken 10 minutes before your interview to see what you've done. This is very, it's like a black box. So you try your best and then you get the result out of it. We don't know exactly how much focus is going into CV or your case interview or your personality or your HR. That's what I would know. But Tiyasha, do you think BCG
So
specific?
I'm not sure if they like focus on it or not, but I do know the partners did have my CV in front of them, because I remember like in two of my rounds I was asked about my CV, or they just looked at my CV. They were like, "Oh, Acha, this is your CV. This is what you did." So they have it, but I'm not really sure how much they focus on it.
Right. All right. So I think that covers all the questions that are present over here. All right, and it's also 1.5 hours since we started blabbering. So yeah, I think we can call it a day, right? Is there anything open-ended that any of you want to share? And yeah, that's about it from us actually. Thanks guys. Thanks for listening to us and all the best. Ayushi, were you saying something?
Yeah, I was just concluding. Yeah, so if there are no more questions up, I think we could wrap up here. So that was a really wonderful discussion. I would like to thank Anirudh, Anil, Ojha, Vasanta, Majeti, Tiyasha, Mitra, and Chinmay Singh for taking out your valuable time and joining us today. Today's session has not only provided us insights into the field of consulting, but it has also opened up newer avenues for exploring their career options in consulting. I would also like to thank the audience for being so patient with us. Hope it was an informative and productive session for you all too. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you. All the
Bye-bye.
best. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.